I'm sure you know that moment when you are coding and someone suddenly drops a tiny little trick that just blows your mind. And you are like, hey, wait, can you do that in React? Well, today I have got 10 such tiny tricks, but those are mighty tips that you will instantly recognize as helpful to you. I have been coding with React for, I don't know, for several years. And these tricks or these tips are very close to me. And I feel that if you are a beginner to React or a junior developer, you must know this because senior developers use these tips day in, day out. And the best part is all these tricks are React 19 friendly, which is the latest version of React, and ready to use in production right away. So let's go. So the first one is about children plus props composition pattern. This is one of the most powerful yet underutilized patterns in React, I would say. Whenever you have a tightly coupled rigid components and you want to transform them into flexible, reusable building blocks, that's where this particular pattern come into picture. It makes your React application really scalable. Let's understand. With this pattern, you are enabled to pass any JSX without hard coding the components layout. For example, here we are seeing a card layout. And what it takes the JSX children as a props, and you can see that entire children I can render inside this component. And in this case, it is surrounded by a div. It can be any other container of your choice. But what is the advantage of doing this? Whenever you are using this card component, for example, here by importing it, and just take a look at it, I can pass any number of JSX over here. So you are passing H2, you are passing a P, you can pass a button, you can pass a table, whatever it is, as a JSX to this card as a children. This is very usable because you can have a layout for a card, and whatever the content of the card can be varied, can be different from one card to another card implementation, and that's what you can pass as a children to it. So instead of making separate props for title, content, footer, it just allow the children. It's like the Lego block approach. Your component is just the container and the parent decides, in this case, this particular component, which is a parent of card component, decides what to put inside. And why senior developers like this approach? Senior developers understand that composition over inheritance is not just a programming style, it's a mindset. If you have followed my 40 days of JavaScript, in that playlist there is a video on object-oriented programming. There also I told the same thing, that composition is a mindset that leads to maintainable, testable, and scalable code. Here, exactly that's what we do. We compose each and everything of this JSX, whatever we want, into an outer layer component, which is card in this case. I hope you use it and you find it helpful. Let's go to the second one. I think the key props is often misunderstood as just a React's requirement for list. But senior developers leverage the power of key as a very powerful tool for controlling the life cycle and state management. Have you ever used things like this? That you have a form component and then you use the key attribute or the key props to do something for state management of the form. See here, there is no ULLI list at all, but I'm still using something called key using the form version. Why? Because there is a hidden power of keys. When React encounters a component with a different key, it completely unmounts the old component and mount a new one, right? This triggers a full lifecycle reset, which can be immensely useful for complex state management and the scenarios. In this case, if we see, if I go inside this form, this is a simple form which is having an input field, and on submit, it is just calling this method called on submit. And this on submit method is passed as a props to this form component. Pretty simple, isn't it? This input field is maintained and managed by a state called name. As you are seeing, we are passing the name as the value of it, and on change, when user type on this input box, we are using this set name, the updater function, to update the state. Very simple component called form. Here we import the form and then we are using this key, and the value of the key is nothing but something called a form version, which is the state over here. Okay. And on submit of this form, we are calling a function called handle submit. And on handle submit, I am updating this form version state. So every time someone submit this form, what we are doing, we are throwing away the old instance and creating the new one all the time. If the key stays the same, if the version stays the same between the renders, React uses the component and preserve the state. If this key changes, React will unmount the component and create a new one from the scratch. Now, why this is powerful? If you have a use case to reset state without manual reset logic, instead of writing a bunch of state reset code, just the key that can help you to do this resetting, the overall resetting. It may be also useful in some cases where your internal component state is stale and you want to start from a clean state. The usage of this you will see mostly for forms, timers, animations, all these things where anything with its internal state can be restated without touching its internal logic. However, a word of caution will be please use it with lot of care. I have seen that people have started using with key equals to dead dot now. No, please don't do that. Whatever you assign to key, that should be very much controlled. That should be controlled by you. That should be controlled by program. You should not be using things like math.random, dead.now, which has very, very higher frequency of changing with a new value, thus remounting this particular component for you. That's what you don't want, because unnecessary unmounts is always equal to losing the state and the performance it. So wherever you would like to use it with this caution, and that this is a control way of starting something from the clean slate just by remounting this component overall again, you may find key very, very handy. So that's the second trick. Let's move to the third one. I'm sure that all of you know about the logical operators, ternary operators, and everything. But the main point of the third trick is to keep your JSX clean and readable. Avoid multiple if and else block, cluttering the return value of it. A simple way of putting things would be use this and along with the condition. So if user logged in, then only I want to show the dashboard. If there is an item in the cart, if cart is an array and its length is greater than 0 means there is an item in the cart, then only I am going to show the cart element. Otherwise, I am going to show the empty cart element, right? So keep your JSX cleaner and make sure that you use the proper logical conditions. This logical operator AND is a great tool when you only want to show something if the condition is true. Ternary operators like this one works really well when you have an if or else scenario. You can also use null when you don't want to render anything. For example, in this case, I can do null. It is not going to show anything if my cart is empty. Senior developers understand the subtle difference between conditional rendering approaches and choose the right pattern for each scenario, considering performance, readability, and potential edge cases that I have seen junior developers often miss. So, if you are starting to code in React, try to keep your code clean. At the same time, definitely look into the logical part of it. If this logic is wrong, then the operator is going to do something really, really wrong. So that's my tricks number 3. Let's go to the fourth one. Who wants to write more code when you can do things with reusability? That's exactly React Hook brings on table for you. It brings reusability. For example, if you have to deal with local storage, like you have to store something in the local storage and then you have to get something to the local storage, no need to repeat the local storage boilerplate logic everywhere. For that reason, you can create something called a hook and then use that as your reusable logic anywhere and everywhere you need in your application. Custom hooks demonstrate the mastery of React's core design principle. What do you know? That is what is composition, separate of concern, and the ability to abstract the logic while maintaining the declarative nature of the React component. So most of the senior developers recognize that the custom hooks are not just the code reuse. It's also about creating the use case specific APIs that make code more expressive and maintainable. For example, in this code, I am worrying about the theme and I'm setting the theme of my application, but I also want to store that theme information into the local storage so that next time I come back to the application, I can read from the local storage and show the theme. So for that reason, I have a hook called use local storage, which I'm initializing with something called a light theme. And then I have a function called toggle theme that I'm calling on a button click. And what toggle theme is going to do, it's just going to toggle the theme. If it was light, it will make it dark. If it was dark, it will be light, right? That's what it's going to do. But the main magic is happening inside this hook. If I come to this hook, of course, it takes a key and the initial value. We have seen that as theme and light. And this is what it's going to do is maintain a state for this particular value and setting the things into the local storage, right? Pretty simple. You can also enhance this look further with a lot of validations and other cases, but to keep things simple and the focus area on writing custom hook, this much is enough. So whenever you have use case specific or the domain specific logic that you can abstract like an API and can reuse in the multiple places in your application, think about hook. So that's my tricks number 4. Let's move to fifth one. Not sure about you, but it's a real pain when you have to work with those Z index and dealing things with CSS to make something look like a tooltip, intuitive, or modal. Now the trick 5 is about the portals. Provide a very powerful way to render components outside of your parent DOM hierarchy while maintaining the React components tree relationship. So this is very essential for you to know when you want to create models, you want to create tooltips, you want to create overlays that need to escape from the regular your component stack or the component hierarchy. If a model is opening up, you might want to take that out of your component hierarchy because model is really not part of your component hierarchy. And that's the whole reason React gives you an API called create portal that you can import from react-dom. And then you can define under which section of your UI you want to bootstrap your model component. So for example, what I'm saying that I am going to put my model content inside this div, and this should be bootstrapped in a section of my application that has an ID called modal-root. If I go to the index.html of this application, you can clearly see that there is a div called modal-root that I have defined. My rest of the component hierarchy will very well go and sit inside this div because if you go to main.jsx, I'm saying that anything and everything that comes inside my application component hierarchy has to go inside root. Document.getElementById by ID root is the ID. But for my modal related items, please go to modal-root, which is a sibling of root, is not a children of root. So that means my modal will come out of the hierarchy of the root or any other component and pretty well will be set and visible inside this modal-root. Going to this modal.jsx, how someone is going to consume this? They're just going to import modal and they're going to pass all the modal component over here. Because in modal itself, we have used the first tricks that we spoke about, right? Passing the entire children as a props. So anything you can pass as a modal content and modal is going to display that outside of your regular component hierarchy. So that's going to be a real lifesaver from your CSS stacking context, Z index fixes, and you can also hold on the semantics of your HTML structure for accessibility. So that tricks number 5. Let's move to the sixth one. Though composition is a superpower, but still we need to break away from it time to time, especially when you are going to deal with the DOM directly. And we do it when we care for animations and such things where dealing with the DOM directly become essential. And from declarative, you tend to do things in more imperative way. Now in those cases, you deal with something called reference and you use the hook called useRef that is given by React. Now in some situation, you have to pass the reference as a props from one component to another component. Before React 19, we use something called forward ref. If you ever used it, you remember getting the idea of forward ref is little tricky. For beginners, it is little difficult. But from React 19 onwards, you don't have to really use forward ref ever. You can pass the ref as a regular props that you pass for a string, for an array, for an object, whatever, you can pass the ref. So in this case, I have an input box and you can see the ref over here. And this ref is having a value of this input ref, which I'm passing as a prof. Now, if I'm using this input component in some other component where I'll be passing this prop, let's see how that works. So here I am importing the input. I have the use ref. So I've created a ref, and you are seeing this in the input component. I am passing input ref and this ref as a props. There is no forward ref at all. So I'm passing the ref just like any other props that I pass to React component, and it goes inside this input component as a props, and I set it to this ref. Awesome, isn't it? So this is the sixth one. I hope you like that and you use that instead of using the forward ref. If you're working with React for some time, you must be knowing about something called default props. Now, this guy is mostly deprecated. People don't use it. But there is a real use of it. For example, if you're having a component called button, which takes two props, one is called label and type, there might be a situation that someone is using the button, this particular component, by importing into their component, but forgot to pass this label and type or one of them. In that case, you will end up breaking this button component altogether because you're not passing the type, you're not passing the label, or you're not passing either of them. To safeguard that, we had something called default props. Using that, we used to say, hey, if someone is not passing the label, make the default label as click me. If someone is not passing the type, make the default type as button. That way, if someone is ignoring either of them or both of them, you have a button still working with this type called button and label called label. Now, there is no default props, people don't use it, and that's why you can use this simplified, much simplified way of handling the same thing. Use the default value. When you destructure something, you can also add the default value. Destructuring, we have learned in 40 days of JavaScript with a lot of use cases. One of the use case of that is that whenever you are destructuring, you are creating the new variables. And when you create new variables, you can also add a default value to that. So this is what we are doing. If a label value is passed from its parent, great, that value will be coming here. If a type value is passed by its parent, great, the type value will come over here. But if label or type or label and type values are missing, then we will have the default value as click me for label and button for type. As you are seeing here, I'm importing this button over here and I'm passing just the label as test. I'm not passing the type. So if you see this button, its type is button and the label is test because we pass the label as test. So the default value is not taken, but for the type, the default value button is taken. Now let's move to the tricks number 8. The trick 8 is about the state collocation to avoid over rendering of your component. First, let's understand what is state collocation mean. Collocation mean keep state as close as possible to the components that is using that state. Okay, again, keep state as close as possible to the component that is actually needed or using it. The opposite of collocation is another paradigm which is called lifting the state up. That means putting the state in the parent component and then from the parent component the state being handled for all the children. These are the two different ways of looking into the problem. Now the code that we are seeing over here is a to-do app, very simple to-do app. What is happening over here? That in the to-do app we have bunch of to-do items and those to-do items are passed as a props. Think as an array. I have passed a bunch of to-dos over here. These to-dos we are going to iterate and of course we are going to display in an ULLI list in the to-do app component. But here there is a component called to-do item that is responsible for the rendering part of each of the to-do item with a checkbox. If you notice over here little closely that there is an action called toggle done. That means whenever I am done with a to-do, I will check the check mark saying that, hey, my to-do is done. Or I'll uncheck the checkbox saying that, oh, I still have to complete this to-do item. Now that functionality, though it belongs to each of the to-do item, we still choose to keep it in its parent, to-do item's parent, which is the to-do app, and it is over here. So the toggle done is over here and it is managing the state of this to-do over here, and the toggle done is passed as a props to to-do item, each of the to-do item, and the state of each of the to-do item is being managed in its parent component called to-do app. What will happen if we go to to-do item now? To-do item takes this toggle done function coming from its parent. It doesn't have its own state on change of the checkbox. It is calling this toggle done, which is taking care of the state change in the parent component, right? But there is a problem. This is going to cause unnecessary re-renders. We are going to see that. Changing the done state of one to do is going to re-render all the to do items. Why? Because it is being managed into the parent component, and inside this parent components, all these to do items are there. There are multiple to do items, right? Based on how many elements are there in this to do's array, that many to do items will be there. So one to do item, if it change, it is going to re-render this entire to-do app component. That means if there are 100 to-dos, it is going to re-render all the 100 to-dos because of one to-dos done has got changed. You want to see that? So here is the implementation, two implementation. One is with the problem that I have stated, another one without the problem that I have stated. If you see, if I just uncheck this code, you will see all the to-dos got re-rendered. You see this? Everything is getting re-rendered. If I'm just checking, unchecking, if I'm doing this, all the to-dos will get re-rendered, all. But in a fixed scenario where I have done the co-location logic for the state management, if I just uncheck, only this particular guy get re-rendered. If I check sleep, only sleep will get re-rendered. If I uncheck sleep, only sleep is going to re-render. But here, if I check sleep, you will see all the to-dos are getting re-rendered, right? You are able to see this. So let's see the code after refactoring, after applying the co-location principle. This is the to-do app. Now it doesn't manage any of the state of the to-do item. You can see this. It gets the list of to-dos as an array. Just iterate through and pass each of the to-do to the to-do item. If we go to to-do item, now to-do item managing its own state, whether this particular to-do is done or not. It is never managed in its parent. This is what we call as co-location. We need this state only in to-do item component, so we should be managing it over here. So the fix done here by co-locating the state. This is far better because state is now self-contained. To-do item manages its own state and it doesn't depend on parent's global control, which is completely unnecessary in this case. But again, the word of caution, you may have situation where you don't want to co-locate. You really want to lift the state in those cases. What are those cases? If multiple components depend on same value, okay, then you have to put that particular value as a state into the parent component of those multiple child components. If you need to sync the state with a global value, that case also the global value has to be kept in the parent somewhere, and based on that you have to sync the state of your child components. If you need cross component coordination, in that case you can lift the state up, but there are other methodologies like context. There are other ways of managing state if your application state grows really complex. Okay, so use it wisely. Wherever you can keep your state close to the component and is not required by other component at all, make it co-located. Now let's move to last two tricks, which are not code tricks but the tool tricks. So the trick number 9 is to use a tool called React Scan in case you are not doing. React Scan is a tool that's going to tell you very upfront that how and where the re-rendering is happening. You have already seen me doing it, right? Whenever in this problematic scenario I was checking and unchecking, I am able to see that to-do app is re-rendering. Along with that, each of these to-do items are re-rendering. But in this case, only my one to-do item is re-rendering. I can see this thing without looking into the code by using this tool called React Scan. Now to use that, go to React Scan, click on this Get Started, and over here you have the installation instruction, whether you're using npm, pnpm, barn or yarn, based on whatever it is, you just install that. And then based on what is your environment, you have to do the setup. For my case, it is a pure React application using Vite. So I'll click on Vite, and there are multiple ways that you can integrate it. You have to integrate the script if you have the index.html file, or you can do it in a module way also. Like, it is very straightforward. If you have a Next.js application, there is a documentation for Next.js app router. Then there is for Remix, there is for other environments as well. So I would suggest you use this as much as possible. It has many more control that you can actually utilize, inspect, and see where exactly re-rendering is happening more that you don't want to happen. Now let's go to the last tricks and the last tool that I'm going to talk about. The last tool is the flame graph. I use it a lot. I'll tell you how to use it. Make sure you open the Chrome DevTools. I'm using Chrome, so this is a DevTools, and you have this React DevTools install, the extension install. After that, you can click on this arrow and you can click on this thing called Profiler over here. Once you click on Profiler, you will see something called flame graph. You see over here flame graph. Now you have to record a session for flame graph to capture what exactly happened. Let's do it. So I'll start the profiling. For this, I'll click over here, and then I am going to play with this portion of the problematic code, right, where things re-render. So I'm doing this, re-rendering, and I'll stop this profiling. Now, if you see over here, see the re-rendering part. Whenever I clicked on the to-do item, the to-do app was also re-rendering. You see this? For every to-do click, the to-do app is also re-rendering. That's the problem that we spoke. The to-do app should not re-render, because if the to-do app re-render, it is going to re-render all its children as well. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to do the second profile. In the second profile, we are going to use this one. In this case, you are able to see, right? All these things are in different color. I'm sure that we may need a separate video to do a deep dive in the flame graph. But for now, at a high level, I am going to show you the usefulness of it. Here we are able to see the re-rendering, right? Now I'm going to do the profiling again. And this time the profiling will be on this one. So here I'm checking this, I'm unchecking this, I'm unchecking this, I'm unchecking this, and let's stop it. Here you see this, the to-do app did not do a rendering on the to-do item. It says very clearly, did not client re-render. Only thing that got re-rendered is this one, the one that I toggled. But because of that, its parent never got re-rendered. You see this? So wherever you want to capture this rendering cycle, you want to deep dive, you want to drill down, want to see things further, flame graph is very, very useful. So if you use React Scan and the flame graph in combination to figure out where the re-rendering is happening, what is the portion, what is the time that it takes, all this information you can extract out. I hope it was helpful. You can always learn more about it from internet, and I'm also going to come up with some videos around this area in future. So hey everyone, I hope it was helpful. A good news for you, sooner I'm going to get started with a React design pattern playlist. If you have enjoyed my 40 days of JavaScript, I'll let you know that you're going to enjoy the X days of React design pattern as well. What is the value of X? I'm just figuring it out. So that's going to come up soon in a couple of weeks from now. But in the meantime, I'm going to push some dose of React now and then, so that you can start preparing your mindset for that bigger thing, which is React design pattern, where I'm going to pick up each of those important design pattern, break them into a layman language for your understanding, and build something in every session with that design pattern. Are you looking forward to it? Don't forget to subscribe to tapaScript. Don't forget to show your support, because it means a lot. And if you like this video, please post a like, share this, and comment. It will be a lot to me. Thank you very much. Stay well, keep learning. We'll be back soon again with another constructive React session. Thank you.